Okay, Bruchim Habayim. Thank you so much for joining us. Be'ezras Hashem, tonight we continue our study of the laws of Shabbat, and we continue tonight with the next Melacha. It's called Melechet Tzad. Tzad means trapping. On Shabbat, the halacha tells us that we are not allowed to trap any kind of animal, any kind of living creature. And this was done, as you know, all of the melachot of Shabbat, everything that has to do with Shabbat, it all begins with what was done in order to build the Mishkan. As you know, in the desert, when the Jewish people were in the desert, we had a temple called Mishkan. That's where they offered up all the sacrifices and things like that. That was in the desert when the Jewish people were in the Midbar with Moshe Rabbeinu. We had this Mishkan. I'm sure you guys are familiar, right? All the melachot of Shabbat, everything that we can and what we are not allowed to do on Shabbat, comes from what was done in the Mishkan. Meaning, whatever was in order to build the Mishkan. Hashem told Moshe, look and see what they do to build the Mishkan. Whatever they do to build it, that's what you're not allowed to do on Shabbat. That's where we get all of the rules of Shabbat from, right? That's an important intro. Is that clear? Okay, excellent. Baruch Hashem, we've spoken about that. Okay, so now, where was trapping in the Mishkan? What was that done for? So the answer to that is, there are two types of animals that they needed to trap in the Mishkan. One is called the chilazon. The chilazon is a type of a snail that's kind of like, it's like a snail that lives in the water. So it's like a snail and a fish too. And the blood of that snail, when you kill it, the blood that comes out is blue. This is where they got the techelet from. You ever hear about techelet? Techelet is a color blue, and techelet, welcome, looks like the sky. It looks like the color of the sky. And on every pair of tzitzit, officially, there's supposed to be one strand of techelet, of this blue color. So the Mishkan had this color blue that they needed all the time. So they had to trap this kind of snail in order to be able to take its blood and use it to color the curtains and different things that they needed for the Mishkan. So far, so good? Clear? 100%? Okay. They also had an animal called the tachash. The tachash was an animal that had lots of different colors on its hide, and they used it in order to make these curtains again, orot techashim, which means hides of the tachash, which is a type of an animal. So they had to trap it. So since they had to trap the chilazon, this snail, for the blue blood, and they had to trap the tachash for the hides of that animal, so therefore on Shabbat, we're not allowed to trap anything. Clear? That's the melacha of trapping. So you say, well, when does this come up? When would ever want to trap anything? Well, it comes up a little bit more often than we may realize. So first of all, the question that I'm sure you would wonder, welcome, Bruchim Habayim. So there's a lot of different areas that this melacha applies to. Bugs, uninvited guests, like mice, things like that. Can we trap them? Can we not trap them? Bees and wasps and all kinds of things like that. Animals that we may own that may want to escape. We have to go through all these different examples of whether or not we are allowed to contain these animals or these living things on Shabbat, or are we not allowed to? Is that called trapping or is it not? The question clear? Okay. The first thing that we have to talk about is the fact we have to know that there are certain things that make trapping a real melacha midoraita. Doraita means from the Torah. And then there are certain things that trapping will only be considered midrabanan, rabbinically prohibited, but not from the Torah. So, which means the rabbis made it asur. Let's try and establish the rules. It's only called trapping on a Torah level if, number one, it's the kind of thing that people would like to trap. For example, people like to trap animals that can benefit them. Let's say a deer is something that would benefit. Fish would benefit you. Chickens, you need to use them, right? So these are animals that people would trap. Geese, things that people would use. If you're trapping something that you cannot use or you're not interested in using, because people never trap these types of animals, on the spot, it's not prohibited midoraita. Meaning when Hashem gave us the Torah, he only said that trapping things that are usable, that people normally trap them, only that is forbidden. But if, let's say, you trap a fly in a cup on a Torah level, that's not a problem. The rabbis then came and said, you cannot trap a fly in a cup either. Even things that normally people do not trap, we're not allowed to trap, but it's only rabbinically, meaning the Torah originally never said that. The rabbis came along and said, whatever, even things that people don't usually trap, don't trap them either. Now, you'll ask, well, if it's asur either way, so what difference does it make? Well, the answer is that it makes a difference if, let's say, there's a problem, there's something that's really bothering you, there's something that's causing difficulty in the house, it might come at you, different things that could potentially be a problem. Welcome. You understand? This is a rule that we've been talking about all throughout these halachot. It's always important to know what is prohibited. Guys, are you familiar with this terminology? Deoraita and derabanan. Deoraita means when Hashem gave us the Torah, he said this, right? So that's what the Torah says is forbidden. And then there are things that the rabbis came along and added and said, even though Hashem only said you can't do this, but we're telling you can't do this either, or also. Clear? Yes or no? Yes? Okay. If there's any questions, please feel free to raise your hand and ask. Okay? So now, again, so is it clear why we have to know what's prohibited midoraita on a Torah level and what's prohibited midrabanan? It makes a difference. Because sometimes if something is prohibited only by the rabbis will tell you, look, usually we say that you shouldn't do it, but if it's a really difficult situation, we let you do it. Okay? So that's important for us to be aware of. So let's talk about all of these criteria. Number one, if it's en b'minonitzod, which means people never trap things like this. People never trap flies. They don't trap mosquitoes. They don't need mosquitoes or flies or any of these types of things. They need fish, so they go with nets to catch their fish. They need chicken and geese and maybe deer. They trap animals that they could use. But flies and mosquitoes, automatically somebody traps a fly, you should know it's only prohibited midirabanan, rabbinically, not on a Torah level. That's step one. Number two, if you cannot reach it in one lunge, which means that you run after it and it's running away from you. It's still able to get away. For example, a bird inside of a room like this. Okay? Let's say a bird flies into this room and somebody goes and closes all the doors and all the windows of this room. So now the bird is trapped in this room. But can you get that bird easily? No. Because when you run at that bird is going to fly to this corner, that corner, here, there. That bird is going to put up a fight, right? So that is also only considered to be trapping midirabanan, rabbinically. The Torah, originally when it was given to us, did not prohibit closing the door. Even if you want to trap it for the purposes of trapping the animal, the Torah said that that's not called trapping. Right? Because it's not really trapped. However,
what is called trapping?
I'm sorry?
What is called trapping? What's the definition?
Trapping is whenever you confine an animal, a living creature, to a specific space and it cannot get away from that space anymore. Interesting, the word living creature is a term they ask about this. What about, let's say, a human being? Is there such a thing as trapping a human being? So we say that trapping applies really to non-human life. It's not really considered trapping a human.
What if you have like a spider or an insect?
Yeah.
And you have a window in the screen?
Ooh, that's a good one.
And
That's
see
a great.
it all of a sudden, and then you close it, and so that it can't get out of there.
Yes, that's a great application of this exact idea. So if it's a little bit of a
Or
larger,
to kill bugs on, all of a sudden you see this gross, huge bug crawling around somewhere on Shabbat. Can you kill it? Because we always kill it. I'm afraid I don't want it around.
okay, good,
Can you
good,
ask
good.
a goy
So
to-
that's a great question. Good,
can you
good thing
ask
that
a
you're
goy to
asking.
kill it?
What? That's a great question. Okay, good thing that you're asking. Let's get
Or kill a moth?
let's get to all of these questions step by step. But good. Right now, I want to lay out the criteria of what makes it tzad midirabanan, meaning that it's not really considered to be trapping on a Torah level, only on a rabbinic level. So first things first, we said, if it's the kind of thing people don't usually trap, it's not tzad d'oraita, it's only tzad d'rabanan. That's number one. If it's the kind of thing that that is only that you cannot catch in one jump, in one running after the animal, like let's say it goes around from here to there, so then again that would only be considered tzad midirabanan. Okay, that's very important to be aware of. Now, okay, so far so good, clear?
Just can you repeat the
Yeah.
last sentence?
If it's tzad, meaning if you are doing it in a way that it could still run away from you, that's called trapping midirabanan, only rabbinic, because on the Torah level, it's only when it can no longer run away from you. Clear? Okay. And then one last thing, if you're trapping it because you don't need it, in other words, you're trapping it not because you need it, but rather because you don't want it around. For example, there's something that's here, and I'm covering it up with a bowl or something like that, not because I need it. Remember, trapping is always in the Mishkan, it was done because you needed the item that you were trapping. You needed that snail for its blood. You needed that animal for its hide. You needed it. So you trap it because you need it. Here, I definitely do not need this mosquito, right? So, or let's say it's an animal that people do trap, but I don't want it here. For example, it's a geese. It's a goose, okay? A goose in my house, and I trap it, and I want to get rid of it. So a goose is something people may trap, but at the same time, I'm doing it not because I want it. I'm doing it because I don't want it. I want to get rid of it. So that would also be only trapping midirabanan. It's still forbidden, but under certain circumstances, we're gonna show that it's allowed. Okay, clear? So far, so good? Amazing. Okay, great. So let's talk about some very basic examples of tzad. So let's say you have a pet. Okay? It's important to be aware that pets. Anybody here have a dog? No? Or a bird? No?
I used to have a parakeet.
You used to have a parakeet.
I have a turtle.
You have a
Oh, you have
turtle.
a turtle?
Well, my brother
Turtle.
does.
So they talk about these things, and they say that animals that are very, very, very slow and that are domesticated, there's really no trapping with them at all because of the fact that they're not going anywhere in the first place.
So you take it
Right.
outside. Let me tell you, that turtle runs for its life.
Really?
Yeah, and I tell my brother.
Oh,
God
I didn't know
forgive
that.
me.
I thought turtles are very slow.
Oh my gosh, this turtle.
How big is the turtle?
It's like this
Oh,
big.
no, when they're
Oh, a
small,
very
they-
small turtle. Okay.
It's,
I thought it was like one of those big turtles.
oh,
Okay.
it's like a small turtle. It's very slow inside. Once it hits outside, I don't know if it's trying to run away.
Wow, you see?
Runs.
So that's a very interesting thing. So this is important to be aware of. So let's say you have a pet, okay? If your pet or any animal that you have is trying to run away, okay? So then at this point, the animal is battling for its freedom. If you then contain it, you are trapping it. Okay, so that's an important point, right?
So
That
when
the
people
word,
have cookies,
the word that the Shulchan Aruch uses is called marad, which means the animal rebelled against the owner. It says, I'm out of here, right?
Marad is rebel.
Yes, yes. So therefore, if the animal rebels, now you've got a problem. So let's say, for example, they talk about this. Let's say a person knows that his dog, okay, when you open the door, The dog sees the light and the dog jets for the door, right? So now if you close the door, trapping it, believe it or not. It's an interesting thing. The poskim say what you should do in the first place is that when you open the door, put your body in front of the opening so that it never had a way of getting out. You understand? It was already trapped and it stayed that way. You never gave it the opportunity to leave so that when you close it, you're not trapping it again. It was just the same status the whole time. You see what I'm saying? Interesting thing. You don't think about we don't think about these things, but that's what they say. So Rabbi Ribiat brings this down very interestingly. Is what would you say about a dog that's on a leash? And then the dog sees, welcome. The dog is on a leash, and then the dog sees that something that interests it, and the dog is starting to run away. And you hold on to the dog. You keep it there. Welcome. So now it could be considered trapping. It's a problem, right? On Shabbat, it's an issue. You got to make sure. Now, on the other hand, what's the other option? This is also a problem. If your animal is going to now damage somebody, for example, let's say it sees a little kid and it wants to run after it, and your dog is a little bit bigger, and it might actually hurt that little kid. So it's true, you might be trapping the dog, but on the other hand, why are you trapping it? Because you need it or because you don't want it to hurt the kid, right? There are certain considerations that you have to take into account. So that already could be considered melacha. When you're trapping it for a reason other than you need it, like we said before with a mosquito or with a goose in my house, I'm trapping it not because I want it here, because I actually don't want it over there. That's another consideration to take into account. So let's try and put these things into perspective. Okay, so obviously if you're trapping something that you need like fish or something like that, there's no question that you are in violation. Now I want to just one disclaimer, important to know. All animals, including your own pets on Shabbat, are considered to be muktzeh. Muktzeh means there are things that you cannot move on Shabbat, right? Certain things you're not allowed to move from one place to another. Animals that are alive are muktzeh on Shabbat, no matter which animal we're talking about.
You're not allowed to walk the dog.
So walking the dog is walking itself. You're not moving it, right? The only thing that I was pointing out is that there could be a potential moment where you're trapping it because if it wants to go and you hold it back, that could be called trapping.
What about
Yeah.
bird?
Huh?
You leave it in the cage.
A bird you could leave in the cage, no problem.
That's it.
Before
I'm not
Shabbat.
putting it-
But let's say that the bird is flying around your house very freely, and now you want to put it into a cage. That's confining it into a smaller space that now it can't go anywhere. That could be considered a form of trapping, right? So that's a problem. Okay.
If he's not fly, I
If
just bring it, give him some piece of the apple.
Before he was flying all around the house. Now I put him into this
My
cage.
bird's not flying.
You have a bird?
I have a parrot, but no flying.
He doesn't fly. So to begin with, he's stationary. Okay, so then for him, it wouldn't be a problem. Okay, good. Okay, very good. So that's very important to be aware of. Can you trap it as is, or is it still running around? If you make its place smaller, then you have an issue. Okay, now, there's a very interesting discussion amongst the poskim. We're going to talk about all these questions that you guys asked, but let's start off with this discussion. Let's say that there are flies in a drawer. Okay, so you open up a drawer, there are flies there. Now you want to close the drawer. It's Shabbat, you want to close it. Now you are well aware of the fact that the flies are in the drawer. You're closing it. That, the poskim say, we should not do. Why? Because you're trapping the flies in the drawer on Shabbat. Now, you'll say to yourself, well, who cares about flies? Do I need the flies? No, I don't need the flies. Do people catch flies? No. So it's like a real, it's like rabbinic on top of rabbinic. Why? Because we said in the first place, do I need it? It's only trapping on a Torah level. If I need it, I don't need it. Do people trap this type of insect in the first place? No. So then it's only the Rabbanan. It's a big stringency what we're saying. But still, the Shulchan Aruch says, don't do it. So what's a good solution? What you do is before you close the drawer, just kind of shush them, make them, you know what I mean? Get rid of them. And that way you'll be able to close the drawer, no problem. Now,
Do you have to let them go out?
try to. Right? Now, all right. So you want to trap them so they stay in,
I
right?
don't want bugs in my house.
I get it, right?
I
So
don't want them to go in my food. I don't want them to go in, and my child won't sleep in her room if there's a spider.
okay.
You know,
So okay, look.
my solution is to always have somebody kill it because we're afraid.
Okay, we're talking about flies. I mean, it's not like yeah.
In anything.
I am right there with you. Yeah.
Something.
So look, so this is, I mean, I guess it depends on how severe of a situation it is. But if it's just a couple of flies, then
If you have
it's
an
probably
infestation,
okay. That might be something else. That's a different thing. But let's just keep it simple for now. What if you don't know whether the flies are there or not? Okay. What if you don't know if there are flies there in the first place? If there are flies there, then by closing it, you're trapping. If there are no flies there, obviously it's fine. So over here, there's an important rule that some of the poskim bring down, and that is that when you're not sure about what the circumstances are, meaning if there are flies here, my closing it would trap them inside. If there are no flies here, so then it's fine. So there are some who are lenient, and that's the opinion of the Taz, that you are allowed to close it in that situation if you don't know whether or not they are there or not. Okay, so if you aren't sure whether there are flies there, and let's say it's dark, you can't see, you would be allowed to close it. Yeah.
You said that if you're not sure, like it's something that nobody wants, and you're not doing anything.
Right. And so the thing is, it's midirabanan on two levels. So again, on a Torah level, this would not be a problem, right? And over here, even if, in other words, it's like a real stringency, but still, Shulchan Aruch says, don't close the drawer. So Chacham Ovadia says, but it's easy to deal with it. Just get rid of them.
This is saying.
Yes, midrabanan, we say not to do it, and therefore we're strict about it, and we just try and get rid of them like that. Now I'm saying, but Lord, what if you don't know in the first place whether or not they're even there? So then in that case, you'd be allowed to close it. Now, by the way, this is only when you're actually trapping them. If let's say there's a hole in that drawer and they can get out from somewhere in the back, you didn't trap them. So then it's fine. There's definitely no question. Right? Yes.
So that is the same if like there's a bug in the bathroom, and you just close the bathroom door, if you're assuming that
Yes, definitely. No problem. Because it's not trapped. It can still get out. No problem. Now, there's a very important rule, okay? As we've learned many times in the past, remember, what did the great Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai teach us in the laws of Shabbat? Davar she'eino mitkaven mutar. Remember what that means, everybody? Correct. If you don't intend to do something, right, then it's permissible. So let's say, for example, the famous example we always give, am I allowed to drag a chair across the grass, even though it might make a ditch in the grass, and that's forbidden, right? But it might not make a ditch, right? So we said the halacha says you're allowed to, as long as there's a chance it's not going to actually make a ditch, correct? Right? Beautiful.
And there's
So-
psik reisha.
Very good. But what if it's a psik reisha? Remember what does psik reisha mean, guys? Remember. Exactly. What if you know for a fact it's in other words, it's such a heavy chair, it's such a heavy table, you know for a fact it's going to make the ditch. So then it becomes asur. Then we say you can't claim you didn't have it in mind. You knew it's going to happen. Of course you had it in mind. It's 100% going to happen. So therefore we view it as if that's what you wanted, right? So therefore, can you drag that very heavy table across the grass if you know for a fact 100% it's going to make a ditch? The answer is no, because that's called a psik reisha, right? Psik reisha, which we explained in the past. Okay, good. So now The halacha over here explains this this concept as well, that there are some times where it's a psik resha, and it's not only is it a psik resha, but it's a psik resha that you don't care about. Lo nichale, you could care less that you are going ahead and trapping this thing. It doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't mean anything for you, and you don't have it in mind either. So that's permissible. So let's say, for example, the question that you had. Okay, let's say that I have a fly inside of the window, behind the screen in the house. Okay, and I want to go and close the window. Is it too cold over there? Yeah.
Like that's extension.
Oh, okay. Got it. Sorry.
But it is like very windy.
It's good.
Yeah. Okay. It's good.
Sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay. Do you want to shut it off? Okay. All right. No problem. Fine. So, again, here's the situation. Fly inside. Okay. Inside the house, behind the screen. Now, I want to go and I want to close the window. Okay. So there are two scenarios here. One case is I want to close the window to trap the fly. Okay, so that is going to be a problem, technically, if it's a small window and the fly can't really still get around. Remember, if it's a big enough window that if you close it, the fly can, still escape you, so then you didn't trap it, then you're good, right? That's very good. But if, let's say, it's a small window and your intention is to go ahead and to trap it, then you have a problem, right?
What if
You
you
can't
want to
do it.
save a life?
How in the world is that going to be called saving a life? It's a fly.
It could hurt us. Hurt
It
your
can't
kids.
really.
It could have a disease.
Well, if it's really like that, then maybe, yeah. But if most of the random flies, I wouldn't assume it's pikuach nefesh. There might be other bugs that are, but not flies. But anyway, yes. Yes, because think about it. Can you reach it? Let's say you want to trap it. If you have a big window, you run at it, it's going to fly away. Fly to this side, fly to that side, fly here, fly there. You can't really get it. Right? So therefore, you haven't really trapped it if it has some kind of way of getting around.
In
Now-
the window, you're saying?
What?
Inside. Between the windows.
If it still has room. In other words, if it's
Room to move in between the screen.
yeah. If it still has space. But let's talk about when it's small and it doesn't have room, right? So now your intention, you want to go and you want to close the window. If you're trying to trap it, then it's much more of a problem. But let's say you're closing the window because it's cold or it's very windy. So am I trying to trap this fly? No. But it's a psik resha that it's going to happen. We know for a fact it's like dragging the very heavy table. When you know for a fact it's going to happen, it's asur. So therefore, closing it is going to be a psik resha. But what kind of wait a second. What kind of insect am I trapping? A fly. Nobody cares about flies. Nobody wants the flies. And there's a rule that even though something is a psik resha, but if it's on something that's only midirabanan and you don't care about it, then pretty much all the poskim say it's fine. So in that case, the bottom line will be that if you want to close that window for a different purpose other than trapping, for example, it's cold or it's windy, and you don't want the wind in your house. So am I doing it because of the fly to trap it? No, I'm doing it because it's cold and windy. Okay, that would be fine. You understand? It's for a different reason. Are we good? 100% clear? Okay, any questions? Welcome. Any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay? So, I hope that was clear. Fine. So again, similar kind of thing. What happens if a bird flies into the house? Bird flies into the house, it's flying all over the place, and you're trying to get it out, but it's going from one corner to the next corner to the next corner to here to there to there, and you have an issue, right? You're trying to get rid of it, and it's not. Now all of a sudden it's winter, it's cold. Can you close the windows, or is that called trapping? So again,
Why would you close it?
what?
Why would you close?
I'm freezing.
No, I'm saying for the bird.
I know, and that's been my situation the last 5 hours. The windows have been open and the bird is not leaving. And now I'm cold. It happened to you. Perfect timing. Amazing. Yeah. So can you? Exactly. You can close it. Why? Because you're cold. Now, why is this only midirabanan trapping? Because do you need this bird? You could care less about this bird. This bird, as a matter of fact, is problematic for you. It's an issue for you. You don't want this bird in your house. So automatically, it's only, even if you intended to trap the bird inside, but your whole purpose would be to get rid of it, right? You don't want this thing here. And you probably don't normally trap these birds. People don't usually trap whatever kind of birds fly into their house in the first place. So therefore, the whole thing is rabbinic. And if you're doing it in order to just stay warm, you're not trying to trap this thing, then it'll be okay. I actually had this case one time, many years ago when I was in yeshiva in Israel. I was spending Shabbat in a city called Petach Tikva. And I happened to notice in this yeshiva that a bird flew into the Bet Midrash, and the air conditioning, the timers on the AC turned on, and somebody went and closed all the windows because the AC turned on, so that the air conditioning shouldn't leave the building. So I went and said to him, "What are you doing? You're trapping the bird. The bird is here," the whole thing. And he ended up saying to me that I was right, that I shouldn't have done that. I happen to think that I was wrong. At this point, I think I realized that I was wrong, because why is that fellow doing it? Is he trying to? First of all, it was a big yeshiva, and you can't really, the bird was like flying up, 20 feet in the air, very tall ceiling, high ceiling. And anyway, we weren't trying to trap it. He was just trying to save the air conditioning. So for all of these reasons, I think that he was actually right and I was wrong. So is it clear? You understand the concept? So you're trapping not for the purposes of trapping the bird. You're closing it because of a different reason. And to begin with, it's only the Rabbanan. So therefore, if it doesn't do anything for you, it would be okay. Okay, clear?
So
Okay.
really, it's like trapping to use materials to use some.
That's the original purpose, exactly. Now, when it comes to all these types of traps that we lay on the floor, or we put out, for example, mouse traps, insect traps, ant traps, these things that we stick up on the, these glue, these tape. You ever see that yellow tape that you hang from the ceiling that you want the flies to stick, onto, whatever? Fruit flies. So with respect to all of those, there's absolutely no question if you put it up before Shabbat, then there's no problem if it actually traps it on Shabbat, according to all opinions. That's no question about it. Why? Because when you do it before Shabbat, then your action has been done before Shabbat. So even if, let's say, a person is actually trying to trap fish, and he lays some fish nets in the river before Shabbat, and he comes back after Shabbat and he sees all this fish was caught on Shabbat, no problem. When did you put it there? Before Shabbat? You're good to go, right? That's absolutely no problem. Whenever you lay it before Shabbat, no question. Now, what about putting it there on Shabbat? So over here, there's a difference between two scenarios. There's directly trapping an animal, which means, for example, if let's say I see some kind of creature that I want, or that I want to get rid of, or something like that, I throw a net on it and I trap it that way. In other words, my action immediately, directly trapped the animal. That is one type. And then there's something like putting out a mouse trap or bait or something like that on Shabbat, and nothing happens right away. It's just with the hopes that over time we will, that mouse will take the bait and the thing will close on it and it will die, right? There are two different ways of having this happen. According to all opinions, the first way is a problem. So according to all opinions, for me to throw a trap onto something, or to put a mouse trap right in front of it so that second it goes on and like that, according to all opinions, that's a problem. You can't do that. Clear? Because that's direct. Now, on the other hand, What about me putting out a mouse trap because I've got these, uninvited guests and I want to get rid of them and I want to put the trap there on Shabbat, but it's not happening right away. Is that okay? The answer is Chacham Vadia holds that that's fine. That's not a problem because that's not considered to be the act of trapping right here and right now. It's not throwing a net onto it, around it. It's just laying something out. And then you don't even know if anything's going to happen, right? May happen, may not happen. That's not the act of trapping that was done in the Mishkan. When they had to go after those animals, they went after it and they trapped the animal when they saw it, or they took that snail out with their net, and that was the end of it. It was a direct thing. It wasn't something that happened over time. That's the way that they learn over here. Clear? Yeah.
Says when you're eating outside, there are bees, and you shouldn't.
Oh, okay. Okay. We're gonna get there. Excellent question. So far so good. Everyone clear on the idea of how to? If you want to put out a mousetrap, technically the halacha permits it. Okay. Even though there was a machloket about it, but it seems that the bottom line from Chacham Vadia is that it's permissible. Okay. Now, let's talk about different situations with bugs on Shabbat. Let's say, like we said, you're out or you're inside. There's an ant crawling around, and you don't want ants in your house. And Baruch Hashem, we live in a place where there's an eruv, so there's no problem carrying. Okay, fantastic. Let's talk about the easiest case. Can you put a plastic or paper plate in front of the ant, and then the ant will crawl onto the plate, and then you take the plate and put it outside and let the ant walk away? According to all opinions, no problem. Why? Because you didn't trap it. You just gave it a new spot to walk on, and then you took that and put it outside. So according to everybody, perfectly fine. Clear? Okay.
What if you flush it down the toilet?
Okay. So the halacha is, I'll get this very clear. We're here to learn the laws of Shabbat. So the answer to your question is that we may not kill bugs on Shabbat if they are not going to inflict any kind of serious damage onto a person. Okay, an ant, regular standard black ant, is nothing more than an annoying nuisance, but it's not lethal and it's not deadly. It's just frustrating.
But what if it's on your countertops? It can get into your food, and that's
Okay.
a
So
problem.
then you have the
What?
thing is you cannot kill it.
But
Okay,
it's a sore for us to eat it. So put
so
it-
don't eat it.
No, but I'm saying if it's
Huh?
on your
What?
countertops and you have all your dishes and your everything.
Yeah.
So that's not a problem. It's fine for it to be there.
It's not ideal, but it's not something that you really can deal with before Shabbat. On Shabbat. Before Shabbat, you have to try and make sure that the counters are clean and that there shouldn't be a reason for the ants to get there.
Oh, but
right?
maybe it's because of the humidity, you know what I mean?
Okay.
It's not-
Be it as it
not that
may.
you're dirty.
Be it as it may, you cannot kill ants on Shabbat. As much as it may bother you, you cannot kill them on Shabbat or anything, really,
You ask
any
a
kind of
goy
mosquitoes.
You ask a goy?
No,
Really?
really. You're not supposed to ask Goyim to do that for you. Yeah.
But you can't say, oh, there's a lot of.
What?
Even a mosquito, right?
So a mosquito, so we're gonna learn now that there's a difference between bugs that can inflict serious pain on somebody. Let's talk, for example, about bugs like a bee, right? A bee sting could really get somebody. A wasp, a scorpion, God forbid, a snake. They can really inflict pain. A dog that has a bad dog bite can really do harm. And even a mosquito, if somebody, let's say, is allergic to mosquitoes, that can be really, a serious thing. But a regular mosquito bite is not that bad, right? So in such a case like that, when we're dealing with painful, I once saw somebody get bitten by one of those huge bees. It wasn't a regular bee. It was like a very big bee. It wasn't even one of those wasps. It was like an oval. It was like a long bee with a huge stinger. I saw somebody get stung with that, and this guy's finger became like a balloon. And it was huge because it was so bad, that sting. Anyway, something like that, remember, are you trying to catch it so that you can keep it? No. So automatically it's the Rabbanan. You're just trying to get rid of it. Remember, the rabbis permitted trapping something like that to avoid pain. Okay, so you trap it briefly and then you get rid of it. You let it go somewhere outside. But the point is that that's only when it's painful. Okay, and the difference between when it's going to inflict pain, God forbid, and a regular mosquito is that a regular mosquito that's not really going to make something so painful on a person's body, you can only trap it when it's already on you, about to bite you. So it's on you, like right now, here's a mosquito, you see it, you could grab it and get rid of it. Or better yet, just flick it off like that. But that's because it's already attacking you. That's why you could do that. But a bee that could, God forbid, cause a big problem for somebody if it stings it, or a scorpion, a wasp, a snake, a dog, one of these things, that you could trap and get rid of, even though it's not attacking. Okay? Clear? You hear the difference between the two? Okay. Is it clear, everyone? Yeah?
When you say get rid of, not kill, just.
Not, I'm talking about trapping it in order to get rid of it, let it go somewhere else.
But you could kill them too.
No.
What about a spray?
What?
What about a spray?
Okay, so sprays
Kill
are
with spray?
sprays.
Does she do it?
No, it's actually quite normal. Spray you're allowed to use if you're spraying not directly on them. Like you could spray into the area and then they would come at you, okay? And like that. They would go onto it, but you're not spraying at it directly. You're not going to the ants and spraying the ants, you understand? Because that would kill them. You could spray a certain area, you cannot spray it directly.
Or like some of these sprays actually have a nice smell. So could you say?
Well, in your case,
you're
I would have a hard time believing that you're spraying it for the smell. Yeah,
No, I'm saying.
it sounds
like
a little bit what they call a subterfuge, which means whatever, we'll figure that out. Okay, fine. Okay, good. So very good. So if it's already biting you, so then you could take it off with your hands and you could throw it away, you could flick it, right? That would be acceptable because it's already biting you. Again, but if it's major pain, right? So then you would be allowed to trap such an item in the first place.
And
Okay,
you
yeah.
can kill them, right?
What?
You can kill these, right?
These things you should avoid killing them, right? If you can. But if they, God forbid, are attacking, then you are allowed to go ahead and do that. Yeah, yes.
So if you see them, can you slap it?
Flick it off. Flick it off, or you could grab it and throw it off. But
You can't like slap it,
no.
even though it's already attacking.
So because it's unnecessary. You don't have to, in other words, you could get rid of it by just removing it. Yeah.
What if it's like really bothering you? Like there's an ant infestation in your room and now you can't sleep on your bed because it's crawling with ants. Like can't like kill those. Like you left a piece of something out and now like they're all over your floor and like you can't sleep in your bed because of it. Like you're supposed to make yourself uncomfortable and try not to kill them.
So what you try and do is you try and relocate them, right? You could try and trap them. You could try and push them into maybe a dustpan and get rid of them. But technically, there's a way to avoid killing them, so you should.
Or like
Or
if a
sleep.
fly
It's
is like
different.
buzzing while you're trying to sleep.
You can sleep in a different room, right?
But not everybody
Sometimes-
has that luxury.
But
Not everyone has that luxury.
so again, so if it's something that could potentially cause you severe, body pain, that's one thing. But if it's just a fly that's buzzing around and not really, doing that, then you don't have the right to kill it, right? Or trap it for that matter, right?
Are we more lenient on YouTube with this?
I was just.
So it's an interesting thing. We know that on Yom Tov, the halacha allows you to do things that are necessary for food. And therefore, one would think that you would be permitted to, let's say, go fishing on Yom Tov and do all kinds of things that would involve trapping food. But still, the rabbis got up and said, we don't trap on Yom Tov. The reason that they said that is because there are certain things that could potentially take you a long time. And they didn't want you getting involved on Yom Tov with things that would take up your entire Yom Tov. Like, for example, on Yom Tov, technically there should be no reason why I can't go over to a tree and pluck an apple off of a tree. We know Yom Tov, you're allowed to do things involving food. So there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do that. But came along the rabbis and they said, we're not letting you take apples and stuff off of trees on Yom Tov. Why? Because we know that you have a whole field. And if we let you do your, apple over here, this guy is going to go and he's going to take off his entire field. He's going to harvest everything on Yom Tov. It's food, right? So therefore they said, we're not letting you do activities that could take a lot of time. On Yom Tov, we want you at home with your family, learning and being with them. And we don't want you in your fields, or, by the dock fishing the whole day. Understand? So even though technically it should be something which is okay, but still on Yom Tov it's forbidden. So there are some times where a person has some kind of pet or some kind of animal that's making a run for it, or is trying to. It looks like it may go beyond the area of the house. If you're trying to prevent it from getting hurt, right? So then you would be allowed to try and, let's say, push it back in with your legs, with your feet. Why not with your hands? Because your hands are, because to touch it to move it with your hands would be muktzeh, right? That's a problem. Remember, pets and animals, all pets, all animals on Shabbat are muktzeh, even the ones that belong to you. And by the way, you're allowed to feed your pets and your animals. You're not supposed to be feeding pets and animals that don't belong to you. You could do your own, but you're not supposed to do other people's, right? Now, all of them, even your own, are considered to be muktzeh on Shabbat. So you cannot touch them, you cannot move them. So how do you deal with this? The answer is you are going to stand in front of them and just kind of push back with your legs a little bit so that they don't leave. Sometimes these things can really make their way around. I once was in somebody's home and he had a lot of pet geese. He had a lot of pet geese all around. He bought a lot of geese. And one of the geese was starting to go to the neighbor's yard. He climbed over the fence, or he flew over, and to get that goose back was very challenging, not easy. So you don't want to have to go through that. So you want to stand in the way of the goose in order that it shouldn't get hurt, let's say. Going into the public domain, it might actually get hurt, so that you would be allowed to kind of push it back. If it's going to cause a monetary loss as well, there's permission to do that also.
So you're
Okay.
not allowed to pet animals on Shabbat?
Correct.
Like, what if your kids see a puppy and they want to
What?
a puppy, like,
Not supposed to do that on Shabbat. Not supposed to pet animals. Yeah,
and are you allowed to touch them on Shabbat?
sure, but you can't. You don't feed fish.
When you do tashla, you feed them with the bread.
You should not.
So you're not supposed to do that on Shabbat.
No.
Because there's times when Rosh Hashanah falls on,
As a matter of fact, by the Sfaradim, we don't feed the fish.
but everybody goes.
We go. We don't feed the fish.
No, but everybody,
Like
like,
I don't know, my this person.
not just Persians, all, a lot of
Regardless, we don't feed the
Mexicans.
fish. Yeah. Sorry.
So if you let your dog out outside and there's like a fence, you have to leave the door open, or otherwise it's like trapping them.
No, if the door is closed the whole time, so then it never had an option to be free.
Or like to let it out to the fence, like it's out to the fence and now you close the door, so you made a trap between the fence.
So, right. So it's going to depend on if the animal is actively trying to run away or if it's just comfortable in its own place. If it's comfortable in its own place, then you open the door, you close the door, it wasn't trying to go in the first place.
Mhm.
But if it was trying to run away and then you shut the door, so now you just trapped it. That would be a problem. So, sorry, just 1 second. Yeah. An unofficial pet.
Cat that comes with you.
Yes. The leftover rice,
Yeah.
throw it out.
That's a nice question.
always. Kids love
Okay,
to
so to do that on Shabbat and they are not your birds, you can't do that.
even if they're not, they don't belong to anyone.
Correct. You're allowed to feed the animals that you're responsible for on Shabbat. You're allowed to feed your fish. You're allowed to feed your dog. You're allowed to feed any animal that you own and belongs to you. As a matter of fact, you have to feed them before you yourself eat. Right? It says before you eat, you have to feed your animals. Right?
You have to feed your kid.
Every single day.
Yeah.
She feeds this cat every single
And it's not hers.
It's not hers, but she has like a name for it and everything.
Ah.
Her cat.
Yeah, that's.
It's possible. It's possible that if she ever has she ever taken it into the house, has she ever
That's kind of really make noise and like hit the window, hear voices.
it's possible if she already brought it into her house that she took ownership of it because it was ownerless, and by bringing it into her house, she made it hers, possibly. So therefore, if it's actually hers, then she'd be responsible to feed it. If not, then probably the answer would be no. Yeah. Better to make yourself the owner of it. That way you'd be allowed to feed it. Yeah, if that's the case. Okay, so very good. So that's important. That's exactly what we just said. That now it's important as well to know that the following rule. He says like this: Afilu ba'alei chayim sheli, even things that belong to me. Im darkam limtzo la'atzmam mezonot. Let's say that they are the type of animals that are able to fend for themselves. Asur li litroach, klomar latet lehem mazon, ve'lo mivayim hem hefker she'asur. It's definitely, I'm not supposed to do any extra work, unnecessary work for animals. Okay, that's important. On Shabbat, there is a rule. Again, you're not necessarily doing any melacha, but unnecessary extra work that you don't need to do, it's better that you shouldn't do. So therefore, if you are actually going out of your way for an animal that is not yours, then it's a problem. And even if it is yours, and let's say it knows how to take care of itself, then you shouldn't be going out of your way to do extra work for this animal. Okay? I mean, I want you to know, sometimes people get really carried away. I have somebody just asked me this week, they have a dog that died. Now, I understand dogs that are part of your family, they're there for a long time, 14, 15 years, and then they pass on. Okay. They took the dog to a pet cemetery. They have a special cemetery for the pet. Okay. It's buried next to the last dog, by the way. So the previous dog passed away. Now they buried this one next to. Now the question comes: should we say Kaddish?
Really?
I'm not joking. They said Kaddish.
For a dog?
They did. They said Kaddish for the dog.
Was it circumcised?
What? I didn't get into that detail. Okay. They said Kaddish. So, sometimes people get carried away. You have to remember, a dog is a dog, right? It's a dog. It's an animal, right? And therefore, when it comes to Shabbat, you have responsibilities to your animal, good. But if the animal can take care of itself, that's what he's saying over here. Person should make sure that he's not doing extra for a dog. Okay? Very important to be aware of that. Bark mitzvah. Yeah, this woman told me that they made a bark mitzvah for the dogs. Okay, good.
And you walk the dog?
So that's what we're saying. You could walk the dog, but you got to be careful because we said that if the dog is at some point trying to get away from you and you hold it back, then it might be a problem of tzad, of trapping. The only thing is, though, that it could be that you'd be allowed to, if let's say it's going to run and attack some kid and do damage. I know somebody that once was walking just on a regular walk, and the guy had two dogs on the other side of the street, and they were not on a leash. They were so excited to see this fellow. They ran, they jumped on the guy, and he fell back on his hand. He broke both his arms. Now, this guy happens to be that whenever anything would happen to him, he would sue. He made a ton of money of this event, but unfortunately, you don't like to make money that way. Anyway, okay, so that's very important. So we mentioned as well that that you're allowed to put out the mouse traps. Now, I want to discuss with you an important question. Question is, we said before, why is it that if, let's say, I have an ant that is in front of me and I want to take a plate and let the ant crawl on the plate and take it out, why is it that that's okay? Remember, we just got finished saying that an ant and any creature is muktzeh. So over here, the question is, isn't this called moving muktzeh on Shabbat? Why is that okay? So there's an interesting rule in the laws of muktzeh, which Bli Neder will get to when we go through it. And this rule is called graf shel re'i. Graf shel re'i means whenever a person has something that's so disgusting to him, that is, it just ruins his whole mood because this gross thing is right here. The halakha says, even if that thing is muktzeh, you're allowed to take it and get rid of it. Okay? So for example, let's say the literal term graf shel re'i means a like something like a bedpan. You know, when somebody, God forbid, can't get up and use the bathroom, so then he has this bedpan next to him and he uses the bathroom right then and there, right? And sometimes it could even be, you know, number 2 in there. So that literally graf shel re'i means a scooper of number 2, right? That's the literal translation. So the halacha says something like that is for sure considered to be muktzeh on Shabbat because it has no function, it has no usage, there's nothing to do with it, it's just junk, it's just human waste. Muktzeh 100%. But the halacha says that because it's so disgusting to you, it's so gross, the rabbis never prohibited you to move that and get rid of it. So that's called graf shel re'i. And that halacha extends itself to many other things. For example, we know that shells are something which you're not allowed to move on Shabbat because shells are totally muktzeh. So for example, let's say a person has all these, what are these garinim? These seeds, right? And then they make a huge pile of seeds, right? You ever see those huge, massive piles of the seeds, the garinim? Yeah. So that could be something that really, you're sitting here, you want to learn, and then there's this huge pile of seeds, or shells of pistachios or whatever, and there are a big mountain of them. So it grosses you out. Now, these things are 1,000,000% muktzeh. Why? Because when something is on Shabbat, it has no usage. It's totally, let's say, eggshells. These are things that are totally muktzeh, right? You're not supposed to move them at all. But if there's such a pile of them that it grosses you out, the halacha allows you to take them and throw them out. Over here, as has been made very clear, these things gross you out. So this ant and all these insects, they're very gross to you. So therefore, this is considered to be a graf shel re'i. It has the same status as something which really makes you grossed out, and therefore the halacha permits you to carry it on Shabbat. Yeah, meaning to move it. Yeah.
You'd be allowed to put this scoop of peanut butter.
Yeah, you would be allowed to. Right?
What?
Like a scoop of something that would entice them to come onto the plate, so that way you can get rid of them and then throw them out. Okay? So fruit peels, are they muktzeh, you're asking? So it depends on, can you still use them for something? Fruit peels are a little bit better because you could still do something with fruit peels sometimes, like an orange peel, something like that. I'm talking about hard shells. There's really nothing you could do with an eggshell.
But if
Or
you
with
put
a-
rice,
What?
if you put rice on it, if you put rice and then you peel it on the rice and then you throw it out, isn't that okay?
Yes, that's a
A
different
little bit.
question. That's a different question. That's about whether or not you're making the plate into an immovable object now. So the rice there would save you from that. That's a different question. But yes, good point. Okay, clear? Everything, yeah.
If you're removing the ants on a plate, isn't it a shinui anyways, the plate?
Shinui?
Like, isn't it like,
Yeah, that's a good point.
I
So the poskim do say that too. That by yeah, exactly, excellent. So the Tzad says that. Mishnah Berurah quotes the Tzad saying that by you moving the ant on a plate, so you're moving it indirectly. It's just being an extension of your hand, and therefore that would be, even if it's not graf shel re'i, you would be allowed to move it that way too. Excellent point. Beautiful. Okay, good. Like we mentioned, there is no consideration of trapping by a person. So human beings are not considered trapping them. So let's say a kid's running away from you and you
What
know,
if you-
I mean, if it's your kid or whatever, that's not called trapping.
What if
Okay,
you what if they had to stay in their room because they did something wrong?
still, it's not considered to be trapping. Right. Exactly. Okay. I think we are good to go. If we have any other questions, please feel free to ask after. Chazakim Ruchim, guys. We'll stop over here. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, everybody. It's School of Mitzvot.